is the Ninja Rob Podcast with Marco Perazzo and Tim Carpenter. The podcast for the true martial artist.
You first.
All right.
I really think you handled this part better.
And everything else that we clearly from the feedback that we get from the audience and the crowd and the fans. It's great. I can't wait till we flesh that out.
You only get that feedback from like people that are closely related to me.
Yes. I wonder why. It's really telling. Really telling about.
They try to bring me back down, I think.
No, well, you'd have to be up somewhere to be brought back down. Hello, my name is Marco Perazzo, head instructor and owner of New Jersey Martial Arts. Here with the Robin to my Batman, the Supergirl to my Superman,
Kato
to my Pink Panther.
I forget who Kato.
Not now, Kato.
Wasn't that like Green Lantern or something?
Green Lantern, that's right. Yeah.
No, not
Kato.
Green Hornet.
Green Hornet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Green Lantern was somebody, Hal Jordan.
Yeah.
My sidekick, my trusty pal,
Tim Carpenter,
owner
of Hellfish Mixed Martial Arts.
Man.
And professional whisperer.
Yes, yeah.
Professional.
We are here with
podcasts.
our producer, Devin Wade, who's tied into the number 2 podcast in the world after Ninja Rob.
Really?
Ninja Rob's number 1 in the world. The $1 million worth of game, number 2.
Maybe we could find a way to piggyback off $1 million worth of
ninjas. $1 million worth of ninjas. No, that doesn't work. All right. So big. I don't even know how to get into the Oxford comma.
Well, there's a couple things. Last week, so I would hope that people would go back and listen to last week's episode just to hear Jordan Peterson's question.
Not the sociologist or whoever Jordan Peterson.
Not the famous YouTube psychologist.
When you say YouTube psychologist, is he not an actual?
No, he is, but he's famous from YouTube.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
He's a real.
Because it's almost dismissive when you call him a YouTube psychologist.
I know, that was the whole point of saying.
Wait, I thought you were a Jordan Peterson fan.
I am, but it's funny to say things like that.
You know, like you told me last week, usually people laugh when things are funny.
Well, we can't hear the audience. But go back and listen to his question because it was a perfect question. It was grammatically correct. It was worded well. There wasn't misspellings. And it was a genuine, well thought out, well formulated question.
Cogent?
Followed by, then after that he asked a slightly sort of humorous, frivolous question, which we were.
So you think that
so I want people,
the Oxford comma is frivolous?
No, the question is, the debate is somewhat frivolous about the Oxford comma.
Okay, because I have, as you could tell by my text messaging and my ability to write poorly, right. I am going to defer to you.
So I did some research. So there's a debate about. Do you know what the Oxford comma is?
So I think I've seen, and my only experience with the Oxford comma is like when you move the comma from between one word or at the end of it, at the end of something where it changes the context of the sentence.
Right. So if you're making a list of things, so the example I read was like, if you say, I love my parents, Batman and Robin. So you would write that, I love my parents, comma, Batman, comma, and Robin.
Okay.
If you take out the Oxford comma is the comma before the and. So you would say that without the Oxford comma, it would say, I love my parents, comma, Batman and Robin.
Right.
Which could lead to confusion where people would think you're saying that your parents are Batman and Robin.
I love my parents.
So the Oxford comma would be the comma before, it would be another comma after Batman.
Okay.
So I am that's the way I learned it, that I'm pro Oxford comma.
But what's the camp? So I was just listening to something on NPR on the ride over here because I'm a learned black belt in jiu-jitsu. Clearly, I don't know much about the Oxford comma. But put yourself in the other camp. Make the argument on why one would not use. So I know you are in the camp of the Oxford comma is correct, but make the argument that the Oxford comma is incorrect and not using it is the better way to go.
Well, there is no argument that it's not correct. The only argument is that it's confusing for some people.
Okay.
But It's used in pretty much all business language, like in a business email. It's
Contracts.
still it's still used that way. And I think I didn't read the article, but I saw a headline that said it's been upheld by a court of law.
Okay.
So I think the only people that don't like it are people that want to make the English language somewhat more accessible to people that can't speak it well or write it well, I guess.
Or read it well.
Read it well, yeah.
Right.
So I'm pro Oxford comma, and I asked a couple.
Well, so if you had to put yourself in the other camp, how do you kind of support the non-use of it? Can't do it.
Can't do it.
So you seem like a guy. It's very
I
difficult
felt-
to change your mind.
No. So I asked one of my students is a PhD. He's in a PhD program in English.
Okay.
So I asked him about it. He's like I'm pro Oxford comma. Jordan Peterson is also a pretty smart guy. He's pro Oxford comma.
Which the YouTube guy or your student?
Student.
Okay.
My wife has a bachelor's. She got her degree in English. She's anti Oxford comma.
Now what's her? Because
So
your wife Nicolette.
This is a problem. She speaks Hungarian. She speaks English.
Why is that a problem?
Well, let me get to it. So she claims that Hungarian is this very intricate, sort of eloquent language, and that English, and it is true that English language is somewhat confusing, but it's also obviously a superior language to all other languages.
Okay. I mean, I'm sitting here aghast.
So she's just anti Oxford comma because she thinks people use commas too much. But
So
when I speak to the true experts on the English language, they're pretty much all Oxford comma.
So let me ask you about the little shot you took at her native tongue, Hungarian.
Right.
Why you don't think it's a complicated?
No, it's very eloquent language.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that it's eloquent. Doesn't mean that it's better.
So how is the English language better than, say, we'll just use Hungarian as the case. Why is English better than Hungarian?
Just judging
Just-
results by country.
Well, so
Who's
then all English-speaking countries would have that same result.
they pretty much do.
Jamaica.
Well, aside from Jamaica.
I mean, we
Is
could look at a
Jamaica
lot of.
Is Jamaica English speaking?
Yes.
That was, I guess it was a British colony.
Yes.
Right? Okay. All right. You got one.
So the language doesn't only define the success.
I didn't say it only does.
Well, right, but you said, well, look at the success
said-
of English.
I said clearly the English language is the superior language.
Does English have more words?
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's like
Because it's the better the language to rap in.
Is it?
exactly. There you go.
Yeah, like you got to think.
Man, so there's your argument.
Now think
Thanks.
about it. When you listen to like Spanish rap, it just sounds like
And I think
That's because you don't understand what they're saying.
Nah, it's the same shit. Same
I also
words.
think English. I also think the English language is a little bit more open to like. You can switch it around more. You can like interchange words, which may or may not be a good thing. But
Multiple words that
the
mean different
listeners-
things.
right, and that she said that's one of the problems with the English
Yeah,
language.
there's
is
yeah, homonyms. They're called homonyms.
Yeah, and like the A. So in Hungarian, there's like 4 A's or something like that.
Okay.
They all have different pronunciations, where we have one A with several different pronunciations. So it's hard for someone trying to learn English to read it because it's like
Because there's 4 different written A's.
right there. I think
Well-
she says her Hungarian alphabet's like 70 letters.
So they know the pronunciation
Right.
instantly of that A
Once
being A
seeing
or
it,
ah.
Right.
Exactly. So there's like 4 A's, 4 O's, 3 U's.
How many jiu-jitsu people do you think we've lost in the first 20 minutes of the podcast?
only the dumb ones.
Only pro Oxford com or anti-Oxford com.
Anti-Oxford, yeah. Only
How many people are scrambling?
But like I said, please, everybody, if you
How many of our
wanna send a
listeners
question-
even know where Oxford is?
To be honest, I don't know where Oxford. There's an Oxford, PA, but
I think they're referring to the great university in England.
Oh.
Anyway,
but yet listen to Jordan Peterson's question. It was a perfectly written question, and it also had a humorous element at the end.
yet frivolous.
That was the humor. The humorous part is the frivolous part.
Gotcha. I just wanted to be clear that
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the entire Oxford comma debate is a bit of a frivolous.
debate.
Yeah, you can only do that if you live.
Things that aren't up to debate though is your
My cowardice.
no your injury, and there's some what's the word I'm looking for? There's some rumors floating around what may have caused your injury. So because you begged me not to
So
touch this.
we could
You begged me not to touch on this subject anymore, and
we
I'm
could
gonna
try
I'm gonna
something-
respect
let's try
your.
something different. So we can go right to Bobby's first question,
Nah.
and we'll come back to some other questions
Well,
later.
no. Let's talk about
but
fight to
the
win.
thing is, it's all related.
Who made?
And I see what you've done.
What did I do?
You've resorted to a proxy war, and you're having one of your cronies ask your sexual questions. You're still trying to dig into my sex life, but without doing it yourself, you've gotten other people to. I know how close you and Bobby are.
Yeah. But yes, we are.
So,
We're very close. He's. I'm closer to Bobby
saw
than
you
I am
guys
some
talking
blood.
on Friday, so I know.
Possibly about your sex life.
Yeah, I know.
And things that you were or weren't doing, and why you may have pulled out of Fight to Win.
So Bobby's question.
Which
why don't you read it?
Sure. Thanks,
And then
boss.
I'll
Anything else you want me to do?
And then I'll answer it.
You need me to pick up some coffee while I'm at it? All right. I was generally sorry to hear Big Timmy couldn't fight on Saturday night. I had heard it was due to a groin injury. My question is, what caused Big Timmy's groin injury? Was it due to all the reckless groin use trying to impregnate his wife? Best regards, Bob. Elio never made a decent movie, Herman. So I'm going to argue that the use of your groin for sexual activity is never reckless. Maybe it's careless, depending on if whatever happens. But I would say not reckless. But I got various texts, people asking me, because they listen to the podcast, hey, do you think that Tim's attempt at procreating may have set him up for this injured state that he's in?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, there's the people that I talk to seem to think that your groin might have been in a weakened state.
I mean, it's that it could be a possibility. I don't think so. I think it's more likely the jiu-jitsu that did it.
Because you say the way you injured your groin is your legs were up in the air. So
That's not normally how I. Maybe that's why I've been.
So look, again, not to delve into what you and Nikki do, Nicolette, I should say, her proper beautiful name, do and how you guys get down sexually. But if your legs are up in the air while you're having sex with your wife,
How do we jump?
I'm I think the podcast's not long enough.
And to say my legs were up in the air is again, it's not really accurate about how I was doing jiu-jitsu.
Well, you said you were going for the triangle.
Right.
Were your legs on the ground?
Yeah, my hips were on the ground. I think that was the problem. Is I was trying to bring my leg
Up.
as it was.
But
on the
maybe
ground.
from the overuse of having your,
No, I don't think so.
getting them pinned back, it can. Well, look. So you were saying that
No, like I would say, it's not the use of my groin is never reckless. It's precise. It's controlled.
technical,
Very technically sound.
a lot of depth.
Come on, man.
Hey.
Let's-
I'm respecting everything you've asked me to respect.
No, the use of my-
These are clinical terms,
And he always gets the finish.
exactly.
man. Submission only. Submission only. I got it. All right.
But now this, I will use Bobby as an example of how not to ask questions.
Did he misuse a comma?
He's pretty good grammatically and spelling.
Bobby's very well educated.
It's just that none of his questions can really be taken seriously.
Well, yeah, but that's got nothing to do with his ability to write and
I
or
didn't say it.
grammar.
I said his grammar and spelling was fine. I'm just saying his questions. What he should do is ask a good question, a good serious question, something that we can work with,
And then follow up with a zinger.
and then throw in the humor at the end.
Yeah, but this is you've lived with Bob Herman.
Yeah.
That would be too subtle and not Bob Herman like.
But later on we'll have a really good serious question that he asked.
But very very political and all that other stuff. But so all groin predispositioned injuries and overuse and underuse and however your legs happen to be when you got injured. What led what happened the day? Because you were here and you thought you'd be able to compete the next day. Yeah. So what was different when you woke up?
It's weird because it wasn't bothering me walking around, and I borrowed one of my students. I was planning on wrapping it up So I got borrowed his knee sleeves or knee wraps
Okay.
that he uses for like squatting. So I wrapped that around my hip and groin and like tightened everything up real tight. And then I tried to just move around on the ground a little bit at the gym. And some things were fine, like some things I didn't feel at all. But then any pressure, like pushing my leg out, I couldn't really take it. So I couldn't use my guard at all. And even when I would try to move on top, I couldn't really push off my leg. I just couldn't really do anything. So then I was still contemplating doing it and just trying to just sort of like try to, I just wouldn't go to the ground at all. I would just push him around on the feet like a terrible heavyweight match.
Right. Did you fire in the BPC, blah, blah, blah?
I did that.
Yeah.
I think it's helping now. It's just that doesn't work.
It's not like an
overnight.
instant effect.
Right. Well, it seems to work fairly quickly, but just not overnight. And there was I still have a little bit of discoloration in there.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
You know? So I told the dude Seth that runs it, I said, hey, I can't do it.
I thought it was kind of interesting what your opponent said to you when you
Yeah, I said I went up and apologized. I was like, hey man, sorry, I didn't. He was like, yeah, that's cool. I know you're not a bitch. He's like, I know you are. I know you're not a bitch.
Well,
you're not trying to bitch out.
He at least thinks you're not a bitch.
Yeah. But it sucks because no matter what, like, there's still a part. Even though I'm kind of proud that I did the smart thing, there's still a part of me that feels like I've.
Yeah, how's that feel to do the smart thing?
It's weird.
Yeah,
It's very
out of your not part of your wheelhouse there.
Yeah. But
So
I've competed injured before, and it doesn't end well because you usually end up competing like shit and making the injury worse.
yeah, it doesn't seem to be a smart, unless there's an amount of money that's going to disappear if you don't compete. There's really no reason to compete injured.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That's stupid.
Especially if the goal of competition is winning, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like anybody could compete, but competing to win is a different idea.
Especially fight to win.
Right.
You're fighting to win.
So, and I didn't get a chance to throw it in there, and I told him that he didn't send it in correctly, but I'm going to address his question. Carl Swanson.
You had a question?
He did.
I didn't see
He texted it to me.
Oh, okay.
And I told him, I said, we have proper avenues and channels. But now that he trains at Roots and is part of the Atos flag, he just shirks all kinds of, yeah, doesn't think the rules apply to him. Maybe I'll reach out to his current instructor, Christian, and set him straight.
Have a talk with him.
Yeah, see, give him a little what for. Anyway, he asked what your thoughts or our thoughts are on the term fight, that when people use it for, say, a grappling match, a jiu-jitsu match, something that's not an MMA fight or a boxing or kickboxing. I'll go to that.
I get the sentiment, but it's a competition. It's a one-on-one physical combative situation. I don't think there's anything wrong with calling it a fight.
I only think it's wrong when people call it a fight if they're trying to somehow trick someone into thinking that it's a cage fight or it's something that is more than what it is. If we're talking, you and I are talking, or I'm talking to Carl, and it's like, yo, you ready for your fight this weekend? We know that we're talking about fight to win, or the no-gi pans or something like that, because we're just interchangeably. But if we're using that term with someone that's uninitiated, then I think it can become a little disingenuous when you use it, because an initiated person knows what you're referring to. Someone that's just some dude that you're talking to at the coffee shop. So yeah, I got a big fight this weekend. He thinks the UFC or boxing or something like that. So that there would be the one issue that I would have with it.
I had at the boxing gym I used to train at, there was a couple guys that were like getting into MMA that trained with boxing coaches there. So this one kid was doing a grappling tournament that weekend, and he told his boxing coach that he was fighting that weekend. And the boxing coach thought that he had taken a boxing fight without his permission, so he made him spar one of the pros and told the pro to beat the shit out of him. And after it was like brutal, like scary brutal.
Right.
Like the way the guy was like getting beat up. And in between rounds, as the guy's like on his knees, like heaving, his coach is like, "You think you're ready to fight?" He's like talking shit to him while he's like on the ground. And the guy's like, "Well, I'm just doing a jiu-jitsu tournament." He's like, "Oh, you're doing that MMA stuff." He's like, "Oh, my bad." And the kid probably had like several concussions within those 3 minutes.
So anybody that's listened to a past episode can harken back to Tim rehashing an old story. Maybe this was episode 9 or episode 8 that you relayed that story. But thanks, we really
told the
appreciate.
story?
Yeah, we really appreciate you living in the past of the Ninja Rob podcast.
Well, it made more sense now.
It did. No, it definitely was a lot. It was.
So that's a situation where using the proper phraseology would be.
Is phraseology a word?
It is now.
Phraseology. Can we call it phraseology?
No, it's not.
No,
a word.
all right.
Phraseology.
So we're jumping around. We're a little disjointed today, but weird things that have happened. And I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, or talking about fighting and boxing. And I'll relay a story. I won't use all the names because I haven't talked to them about if it was okay to say who did this. But there was a challenge match one time at our original school, Maxercise, where the owner of the school had a student fight another student.
I remember.
Because one of the less established student had taken an MMA fight without the owner's permission. I think this is where I got my first foray into coaching, right? I was the eventual 3-time winners coach, and there's video of this. It's like the Hickson Yoji Anjo tapes. There's a video of this fight floating around, and I'd have to ask permission to like name names and all that other stuff. But
no, there's no need to name names.
No, but it was
story without names.
It is. There's so many facets to the story about like weird things and how jiu-jitsu schools used to be run and how they're way more professional. Like I could not imagine that happening at my school today, right? But 20 years ago, it was just not that uncommon for it to occur.
I could never do that to somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could never make somebody that's clearly not on the level of somebody else fight them in a bare knuckle fight.
And man, the dude that he fought was like super good, super athletic. Had been in he had probably had a bunch of street fights before he even got into jiu-jitsu. So like for him, fighting was just like something that he did.
He loved it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, the guy's just like crazy successful in that. And
not just that, but then you put the factor of like, you're doing this to represent
your school, right? And your instructor's yo, this dude's dissing us. So first 2 fights, right? This is like best out of, well, I shouldn't even, it's the best out of 5.
You were coaching the other guy?
I was coaching the eventual winner, not the winner, all 3 times. Yeah. So
rough job.
Yeah. It was super great, but it kind of turned me on to like how awesome coaching can be.
Mm-hmm.
And first one was, I believe, an arm lock, and the arm might have been bent backwards 30, 40 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I couldn't believe that this kid was able to continue. I will give the kid credit that he was tough.
Mm-hmm.
He came out with a shit stance, looked like something between kung fu, wrestling, and the fetal position, right? Second one, I believe, was another submission, possibly a triangle arm lock.
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
And the third one was, and these are famous last words, come with the right, and that's me. We'll have to ask Devin to bleep that out. So come with the right, hits him in the face. It looked like the kid got hit with a ball of lightning.
It was a knee to the face too, right?
There might have been. There was like a knee thrown after. I'm not sure if it landed.
I forget whether it was the punch or the knee that.
I thought it was the punch because it looked,
probably was, and I think he was like on his hands and knees, holding his face, and then I think the knee came.
Possibly, right? And he crushes him with the right, splits him open. I think the kid might have needed 20 to 25 stitches. It was a bad cut, mind you. This was all occurring inside the dojo between 2 students that trained at the school. Yeah. The owner of the school then gets the guy who's bleeding everywhere, get your fucking shirt and clean that fucking mat up with his shirt. Then says to him, I had you go with this little guy. I could have had you go with Marco, Tim. I was like, it was one of the, like, when he said that, I was like, Jesus Christ, he's right. One of us would have had to step up to do it. There was, that was just the culture. But I'm like, man, I'm glad he picked. Again, we'll bleep that out. But man, it was crazy to think how things were done, years ago, and how that guy continued to want to train there after he came back
after he healed up.
After he healed up, and I think they did the smart thing in throwing him out.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that would be a tough one. Like, if a guy had beaten me up 3 times and I was there to train, I mean, I'd be gunning for him after that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was crazy times.
How many years ago was that? Like 20 plus years ago that happened?
I started there in 97. So
about 20 years ago. So yeah, so crazy things that happen at a school we were part of.
I remember one time they told me I had gotten there early, and it was just I guess Rick and Steve were playing like a joke on me.
Right.
So like Rick came down the stairs first and was like, "Yeah, my knee's fucked up. There's a guy here who wants to do a challenge match. My knee's fucked up. I can't do it." He's like, "Would you want to do it?" I was like, "Oh shit." I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then Steve came down and said the same thing. He's like, "Tim, we got a guy coming in later. He wants to do a challenge match. He's a guy from Croatia, some kickboxer." And I didn't know who Krokop was, but you remember this was that guy,
Mike Bensick.
Yeah. So Steve said the same thing, and I was like, "Well, I can't say no in front of like Steve and Rick.
Right.
I can't be a bitch." I was like, "All right, I'll do it." I was so fucking scared, but then I got upstairs and nobody was up there, and they were just fucking with me.
So you remember young Raj that used to be at Prioli's?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a buddy of mine come in. This guy Mike Mack, former prison guard, loved boxing. At the time, he was about 300 pounds. He looked like he was built like Van Vader, right? And I had him come to Joe's old school, and we rolled a heavy bag out into the middle of the floor. And I was like, "Yo, do me a favor, go out and start wailing on that heavy bag." And he's hitting it. You know, it looked like he was hitting a weeble wobble.
Mm-hmm.
And I grabbed Raj. I go, "Yo, Raj." I go, I'm injured right now. I go, "To be honest with you, it's better for the school if you fight this guy." And
How old was Raj?
he was probably like 16.
Okay.
And he's like, "I'm only doing this because you said I should do it."
Yeah.
Right? I was like, "All right, well, you should do it." And then, we let him off the hook. But, that was the kind of the stupid shit you used to do. But he would have done it. I think he would have taken a beating from Mike Mack. But I digress. So you had a bone. Seems like you got a bone to pick with the seated guard and butt scooting. And why it
Did you
sucks so
see,
bad for the sport.
Did you see the Tex Johnson match and Tim Spriggs?
Nah, I left early.
Oh, okay.
So
It was a terrible match to watch. And the same thing as like Eddie Cummings' last match at Fight to Win.
with William Woke.
Yeah, it's a terrible position. I know. It's not saying that it's not effective because I know it's super effective,
Right.
especially for leg lock guys.
Right.
But for this, if anybody wants the sport to be taken seriously, I think it should be like a time limit. Like if the person doesn't engage, you have to stand back up.
Okay, so and look, I'm having I like training with Zach Askin, right? Like I go to because he's probably one of the better leg lock guys that I go with, and it is unbelievably frustrating because he just it's great because he submits me multiple times per round when we go, but I engage him because I'm trying to get past his legs or get to a position or affect my jiu-jitsu, but it's difficult if I don't engage him. Then it just becomes a match of me standing looking at him for 5 minutes, kind of turning and running.
So there's a couple that it's the easiest guard to disengage from,
Right?
Especially no gi. Like you could just stand up and take a step back, and the guy can't do anything.
Right.
It has zero effectiveness for like self-defense or real fight.
Like an MMA guy wouldn't go seated guard.
Can't do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even if they can't kick you in the face, they could just kick you right in the chest. You're not going to catch a leg lock when they boot you in the chest.
Right.
You know? So it's like, I think it's terrible for the sport for like a casual fan to see that. Like people are like, what the fuck is he doing? Why is he like somebody? If you love leg locks and you appreciate like a strategy like that, then you can appreciate somebody.
Right. But how many people, how many casual fans appreciate leg locks?
That's what I'm saying. Like if the sport is going to like kind of become bigger,
right?
Like it should, like I think it could. I think that kind of stuff. There needs to be some sort of like rules put into place to minimize it.
So here's the thing though, is that when we were coming up, most of the really good jiu-jitsu guys were using jiu-jitsu as a springboard into MMA or Vale Tudo. Right? It was kind of staying sharp for fights without having to take a ton of damage.
Right.
Well, a lot of that seems to have gone away because of the professional grappler. Mm-hmm. Right, where they can make maybe the same amount or less, but not take all the damage. I think this is a byproduct of the idea that we're not springboarding into MMA. We could continue to stay in grappling, and we can become so, almost like I think Keenan Cornelius talked about, like the density of certain aspects of jiu-jitsu is becoming more dense rather than less dense. So I think part of this has to do with these guys. Even though Tex Johnson did fight MMA. Right, I think he's got quite a few fights.
Not saying he can't.
No. What I'm saying is it's an odd strategy if your ultimate goal is to be like a kick-ass MMA fighter, which everybody when we started doing jiu-jitsu, it wasn't because we wanted to be IBJJF world champions or win NAGA. We were using those things as a way of preparing for what we thought was a highest level of combat, either a street fight or an MMA fight. But if that's not the goal, then sit away and bore people to death with seated
It's
guard.
not just that. It's I see it a lot when I see people that just start getting into open mats and rolling, and somebody that's been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time that is very comfortable doing that seated guard. It's so confusing for the person that's just starting out. They're like, I don't know what to do. Like,
Right. How do I engage?
why is the guy just sitting there?
Right.
It's just a, I don't know. I have a, and I mean, I use it when I train.
I think we all do.
Everybody just
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of sits and like does it. But I think for competition, and I don't know.
So how would you have fixed that match between? So was Tim Spriggs trying to pass or being the aggressor? Like, because there's some of the
Tim Spriggs
responsibility.
won. Like he made more attempts. So Tex Johnson just basically scooted forward.
Okay.
Tim Spriggs walked back and circled, and then every once in a while would jump on something and try to
Okay.
jump past. So I mean, in my opinion, I think Tim Spriggs won.
I think in the judges' opinions as
well,
well.
he did,
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, it's so easy to disengage from, and if it's just it's terrible to watch.
Yeah,
Terrible from
I'm
a spectator perspective, and I think there's got to be some sort of like either penalty or just a stand up with a penalty.
So did Tim Spriggs do enough for a fan to say, hey, the guy on top was trying to pass, or you know, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, he at the end he jumped on a footlock. He tried to go for a footlock at the very end.
I heard that Tex stormed off.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I
I mean, that guy should have retired. He should have retired after defeating Felipe Pena.
But see, that's the thing is like it really worked for him there.
Against Felipe Pena, yeah. No, and he got
Felipe
it.
Pena engaged.
Engage in a different way.
Yeah.
Right? So you change. How do you change it? Like, how do you make so how do you prevent the next Tex Johnson match of fight to win?
I think Abu Dhabi's got the best set of rules, so you can't just pull guard.
We get you get in the
You
finals.
You can, but you'll get a negative
in the
advantage.
finals.
Yeah. I think even in the
I don't think so. I think I'm pretty sure it's just the finals, but we can fact check that
you
later.
can pull guard in the first 5. But if you pull guard after that during the points, I think you get negative, even in the early rounds.
All right, I think you're wrong, but go ahead. It's not a point that I'm looking to argue. That's very odd. I know. How am I doing with the interrupting, by the way?
Well, you just interrupted me. Yes,
Well,
other than that, it was great.
all right, awesome.
But I'm not.
I just
we interrupt each other.
I'm going to point some things out to my wife. I was just explaining to her how conversations work.
Yeah, I think there should be penalty, and it's hard for a thing like fight to win because there's no points. But
You should be engaging. You know, like the guy on bottom should be trying to make something happen. The guy on top should be trying to either defending what's trying to happen or making something
it's
happen
just
as well.
tough to engage in that position without giving anything up.
So
if
when you
want-
say there's no points, right?
right,
Is it really possible for them to watch it and not count the points in their head?
so they tell you they don't keep track of points, but they just kind of judge who's in control, who attacks more, who has more submission attempts.
But when
So, I mean,
people
they're
watch
keeping
something
track.
like this so much,
Yeah.
where like if a dude watches basketball and he's watching it, he knows 2, 2, 3.
Right.
Yeah, so
One.
you'll have guys who'll say, "Oh, if it was points, he would have been up 18-0." You'll see like guys
Right.
make that
So
argument.
the thing is, like, let's say if a guy was up 18-0, and then at the end the other guy gets him in like a tight armbar and almost finishes him. By their rules, the guy that got the armbar should win, even though he would have lost on points, because they're judging who goes for the submission more. That's the
That's
rule
fight
set
to
for
win.
that,
The thing he pulled out of because of his groin injury based on over sexualizing his life.
Right.
But
So I think this leads into a great next question, which came from Brad Court. Tim and Marco, who are your favorite BJJ competitors of all time and why? How did their matches impact you and your style? Same question for MMA fighters. So I used to, at a certain point in my life, I was a huge BJ Penn fan because he was the guy that went from doing jiu-jitsu like we were all doing, winning the worlds like we all would, even if you've ever competed in anything, he won the worlds, which is arguably the most difficult tournament in the world to win, especially as an American down in Brazil, right? No home court advantage. Then goes into the UFC as a jiu-jitsu guy, can fight at that time, boxing, jiu-jitsu, becomes 2-division world champion. That guy I was a huge fan of.
yeah,
The guy that was the prodigy. That like so he was one of my favorite jiu-jitsu people because he was just some dude from Hawaii that wasn't born into it, that was just naturally good and worked somewhat at it, and so forth and so on. So one of my favorite jiu-jitsu guys of all time was BJ Penn. Also one of my favorite MMA fighters of all time was BJ Penn up until a certain time. I'd probably say up till after his first fight with George St. Pierre. Then I became
After his first fight.
Yeah, the one that he arguably could have won.
I don't see how anybody thought he could have won that fight.
Okay.
I think you could have said he won the first round,
Okay.
but the next 2 rounds he got held on the cage and then taken down. It was like
Great, but it was a much closer fight the first time than it was the second time.
So did you switch sides to George St. Pierre after that?
No, I thought George St. Pierre was awesome. I used to love BJ. Now I hate him. I want to see him just because what he's done to himself. Like he's
legacy.
He's ruined his legacy, and he's ruined a period of my life, like being a fan of his.
Man, you took this really personally.
Yeah, I really have. Sorry, but like, there's a dude like I saw him win the Worlds. Like my eyes were on that match at the Tijuca Tennis Club in Tijuca, Rio.
It'd be cool to see him go back to jiu-jitsu, see what he's.
I think that would be amazing. I'd love to see him do that too, but he's probably too punch drunk. Sorry, BJ. But yeah, so BJ Penn, he ticks off 2 boxes, but BJ Penn up until the first George St. Pierre fight. Tim Carpenter, who's your favorite
BJJ competitors
and
of all
or
time?
MMA fighter? Yeah,
I would say the guys I like to watch the most when I was coming up was Margarita and Hadra Gracie.
2 guys you've competed against.
Yeah, 2 guys that beat me.
Well, I didn't want to bring up the obvious.
But those 2 guys were the guys that and that was, I would think, one of the things that led to my defeat against them both. Was I was like, holy shit.
Not that they were clearly better than you and had multiple world championships.
Hadra, I couldn't really tell, but Margarita, I was like,
you were in that. Yeah, you were in that one.
No, it's not that I was in it. It's just that I know I could do better than I did, But when you go up against a guy that you've been watching since you were 18,
right?
It's hard to separate yourself from the fan you were and just to I'm gonna
so
beat this guy.
I think that there was a period of time, and it's got nothing to do with him defeating you, which I was there for, and don't get me wrong, it brought joy to my heart. But he might have been one of the most groundbreaking, dominant jiu-jitsu competitors in a short amount of time that we saw that didn't move into MMA.
I think he did move into MMA. He
did, but move into MMA permanently. Like he had one fight.
Oh, I forgot. I gotta add that to my MMA guys. So, but back to Margarita, I think almost revolutionized the sport. He was the first guy to. You watch jiu-jitsu from the early '90s.
It was just about winning.
It was close guard.
Right.
It was very boring. Some people think jiu-jitsu now is boring. This was extremely boring.
Right. It was boring and unathletic.
But then Margarita came in. He never used a close guard. He would just he would either throw
and his
you.
pace was crazy.
He was nonstop attacks, open, and then he was submitting everybody, not just guys
that he was supposed to submit.
He was submitted. He submitted. Remember, we were at the
Fabio Gurgel.
We were all there. The place went crazy.
He had submitted a guy that hadn't been submitted in years. He was doing
I don't know if Fabio's ever been submitted.
Well, there was the first time he submitted Salo in competition, which he hadn't been submitted in years. He was submitting dudes that he made submissions cool again.
Right.
Because you're okay, if you're good enough, you can make them work at the highest level.
And then another guy like that was Hadra, who just submitted everybody, including Margarita. But then they fought again, and Margarita, I think Margarita was up on. It was
Is that the one where he gets himself disqualified?
No, he ended up losing. It was he was up maybe 6 points. He threw him past his guard, knee on belly or something, and then Hadra came back and ended up winning all points, but they didn't submit him. But that was a crazy match. So those 2 guys, and Hadra was just so basic and had.
I think there was one World's 12 out of his 13 submissions were X-choke from the mount.
Yeah.
And the one guy just ate it on his face, just refused dementia. I think the guy he refused to tap out. It would have been he would have been 13 for 13 with X-choke from the mount. That's crazy.
Yeah. So he's considered the best of all time and probably my favorite guy to watch. And then,
I will agree with you. I watch Margarita highlights all day long.
Yeah. And then MMA. I liked some obscure guys like Macaco. He was the man. At low level MMA.
When he was doing Vale Tudo in Brazil.
Yeah, the Brazilian Vale Tudo.
I love who was it? Jose Peles Landis that was dry humping the back of his head.
Yeah, but then he pulled his earring out and threw it into the crowd. He mounted Pele and pulled his earring out.
The best part of that series of fights is when they both stop fighting and go chest to chest and stand like 2 Supermen. They're in the middle of fighting. They both stop fighting and just do a face-off in the middle of during the middle of a fight.
It was
Insane.
Yeah, like that's the kind of fights that like you don't really see anymore.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like imagine Khabib and Conor, like middle of fighting, they just stop, go like nose to nose, and stare at each other, and then just take a step back and, then
start fighting again. It's insane. Yeah, it was crazy. That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
But yeah, so Macaco was really fun to watch, and then I don't know, with MMA, I like fights more than fighters.
Okay.
Like I used to really like watching Fedor fight, Nogueira fight, like those.
Yeah.
Watching those guys fight, two of their fights were really good. The second one was kind of like
the one where the cut happened.
That one wasn't good, but the first fight and the third fight were amazing.
And like so, Minotauro, not so much his jiu-jitsu, like from a pure grappling standpoint. Like I was never a huge like, oh, I got to watch him compete. I would watch every single one of his fights because another guy that really into boxing. Right, trained with the Cuban Olympic team, like took his boxing seriously. Probably didn't have the greatest takedowns, but his takedowns were good enough.
Yeah.
And his jiu-jitsu was awesome for MMA. But what made me sad, but also like a bigger fan of his, was the beatings that he took from Fedor, and how throughout those beatings he still kept trying and trying and trying. Like the dude's just a warrior, man. Like how could you not like that guy? And Fedor. I love Fedor because he's eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or he's punching you in the face, and the look on his face is the same. It does like there's no emotion. He's like he was born out of Chernobyl.
And it's like I think MMA was a lot different in that era and before because it was newer. Now it seems to be like people are in and out of it so quick.
The life cycle.
You don't really see a champion that reigns for a long time.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like a couple years maybe. Like John Jones is the one that's been around the longest.
Yeah, but part of that has to do with his suspensions and getting in trouble and all that other stuff.
Yeah, as far as modern MMA, I don't really.
Yeah, I don't have
a favorite fighter.
The other guy that I'm a big fan of, like pure jiu-jitsu, and also some of his MMA, but I like his jiu-jitsu more than his MMA, is Jacare.
Yeah.
His jiu-jitsu. Awesome. He was another guy that kind of, I think he picked up where Margarita left off. Right, like very aggressive style, takedown heavy, submitted some guys that weren't easy to submit, like watching him Kimura Marcelo Garcia at ADCC, where he just jumped close guard and ripped a Kimura off your back, like a lesson you learn in your first 8 weeks of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, he was amazing to watch, and beat Hadjar and Margarita.
Yes, and he beat Hadjar a couple times, I think. One famous match where he got his arm broken.
Yeah,
which was amazing that he ate that shit. And wound up running around the mat and got the open class, and didn't get paid any money to get that broken arm. So, man, so we're on. We did butt scooting. Yeah.
Should we go to Bobby's?
I don't even know if I really want to talk about it.
No, I think it can lead into a good discussion about.
Go for it. All right.
So, Bobby's question is: do you think Donald Trump would be less of a dickhead, asshole, racist piece of shit if he did BJJ? And so it's a terrible question, and it's a great question at the same time.
So is it terribly written, or
no? It's a terrible question that it's. I guess Bobby was watching the news that day when he wrote it, and Donald Trump might have said something that's. But
maybe he wants ASAP Rocky to continue being in the Swedish jail.
How could he be racist if he freed ASAP Rocky?
He didn't free him.
I don't know if Donald Trump's a racist or any. I don't want to even talk about Donald Trump, but a lot of people think like that jiu-jitsu, like training jiu-jitsu, is going to change your life and it's going to make you a whole different person, or it'll like all that kind of stuff.
Now, if you walk in continuing to want to be an asshole, you'll just be an asshole that knows jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, you can. There's been plenty of people that are terrible human beings that can go and
that have had the toughness to stick through jiu-jitsu and get beat the fuck up.
And it might just be because they want to beat people up so bad that they'll stick with it. Or maybe they came in their first day and they were beating
and getting
people
good at jiu-jitsu is more important to them than quitting jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Or MMA or Muay Thai, whatever happens.
And also, it is possible if somebody that's racist, somebody that's in the KKK, came in and started doing jiu-jitsu and was exposed to a more diverse group of people, that they could lose some of their racist feelings. It's possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible.
I'm just going to let that sit right there.
Did you ever see the
The Black Klansman?
Yeah, the guy that
Never heard of it.
Not Clayton Bigsby. The
No, the movie, right? Isn't it called The Black
I
Klansman?
didn't see that. No, I'm
Okay.
talking about the there's a jazz musician that has befriended like
Oh yeah, I heard
30
about
KKK
yeah,
members
yeah,
and got
yeah.
them to like
Yeah.
turn in their hoods or whatever. But no, usually if you're an asshole before you do jiu-jitsu, you'll be an asshole after you do jiu-jitsu.
Right. I think you need to be open to you need to have a goal of changing some things in your life using jiu-jitsu or martial arts as the vehicle to be able to make those changes. If you're coming in just because you want to fuck people up and you're not wanting to change things about your life, then you won't change. The benefit of training with an asshole is, say, if Donald Trump or otherwise, Hillary Clinton, we could use any kind of political figure that people don't like, is you can fuck them up. There's the one nice thing is if you train with Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or whomever, is they might not become less of an asshole, but you feel better that you fucked them up during training. So there's a benefit to it.
Yeah, I think martial arts, rather than changing people, it can help someone reach their potential more than like change them. It can like sort of get them out of their shell.
I think the want to change has to be there, right? It's that you can't like this rock isn't going to bring it to jiu-jitsu class. It's not going to be anything more than a rock,
Right.
Right. The same thing about a person that doesn't want to change, but if they're around jiu-jitsu people or martial arts people that are trying to develop themselves, become better people, maybe they, like you're saying, like they get to realize maybe there are other things in my life that I could work on and be better at. But if they're not willing to open up, I don't think anything's going to change. All right, did you want to read this next one?
This is from Nicolette.
Nicolette, yes.
Yeah. How do you make the decision to pull out of?
I'm gonna leave that alone.
How do you make? Maybe I have to have Devin read this one. How do you make the decision to pull out of a competition because of an injury? When should you push through something versus when is it a smart decision to pull out? Oh, signed, Marco's biggest fan, the lovely Nicolette Carpenter.
Man, I couldn't get more of a twinkle in my eye for your wife after having read that she is my biggest fan. I'm glad somebody's wife is my biggest fan. But man, I think we touched upon it earlier on when you make the decision. When
do you make the decision?
You make the decision when, if there's amount of money that goes away if you don't compete, then you have to compete injured, right? If it's a significant amount of money, like life changing. Otherwise, the goal of competition is winning. Now you need to start realizing that you're never 100% if you are preparing for competition. So are you really injured, or are you super sore, or are you tired, or all these other things? So then you need to have kind of a gut check and realize, all right, I'm banged up. Everybody's banged up, right? But am I real? Like in your case, you have a real injury. There's a giant bruise on your inner thigh, right? You have a pulled groin. That's a real injury that also affects performance, right? If you had that on the back of your tricep, I'd be like, suck it up, dude. I mean, it's like your tricep. You can, you had just a big bruise in the back of your
tricep.
Not a torn tricep, but like a bruise.
Severe injury.
Yeah, I think you could still make it through.
Yeah. The money thing, I think even, so I was thinking like if you're in UFC or Bellator, it's like you start off with you're like 10,000 to fight, 10,000 to win. So it might even be worth it, even if you're severely injured and you're starting out, you might need to go out there and get that $10,000.
Yeah, who knows what your financial situation
and
is.
risk, you risk getting injured worse to make the other 10.
Right.
That makes sense if it's professional and for money.
Right. If you're in the finals of the PFL for $1 million
and also if your goal in life is to be a jiu-jitsu world champion, there's no money really there, and you get to the finals, but you have a broken foot. I think you should probably go out and see what you can do.
Did you break your foot before the tournament? Because I doubt you're making it to the finals walking in with a broken foot.
You break your foot and
that's different. You've kind of committed to this. Yeah.
And then it's a matter of like where the injury is, what the sport. Like if you have a broken finger, you could probably tape that up and keep going.
Yeah, I agree.
But something that limits your movement and like just your ability to actually do the sport.
Yeah, your ability to perform
to a large degree, then you got to pull out.
Yeah. Execution and performance.
And that was like the thing that finally made. I was like really considering just like pushing through it and doing that. I was like, let's fucking fight to win. Like I'll make $100,
Right.
and I'll be on flow grappling. I was like,
It's awesome, man. We finally made it.
yeah, like it's not the end of the world.
All right, I'll read this next one. And this was more fan mail.
Yeah.
This is not a question, but a little piece of fan mail. My husband and I recently listened to episode number 10 during a 4-hour drive to attend a jiu-jitsu buddy's wedding on the New York-Massachusetts border. My husband got very hyped up during your discussion on young trans students training and the evidence of early onset gender dysphoria as a social contagion. He got so hyped up that he had us listen to another podcast that covered the subject immediately after your episode finished. His frustration surrounding the dangers of putting kids through hormone treatment completely distracted him from caring about traffic conditions or bad drivers. While he probably still burst a blood vessel, at least it was out of concern for the health and well-being of children and teenagers. So thank you for engaging in a wide scope of topics and keeping my husband's road rage at bay. I really love listening to your podcast, and I'm glad you guys are doing this. I love Tim, but Marco, I do think it's pretty great when you back him into a corner. Keep it up. Lori Latimer.
I want to know what corners have I been backed into?
You see, this is the beauty of how I do it, how I do what I do when I do it. You don't even realize it. The fans see it.
But what corner?
Man,
How was that corner?
proverbial corner.
What's proverbial mean in this context?
See, I probably don't even know how. Yeah, way to call me out on it.
Way to back in.
Yeah. Way to back me up into an actual corner. Yeah. So, Lori, keep listening. Let all your friends know.
Get a bad road rage.
I may have met him once.
Yeah.
Seems like a very nice guy.
He's cool.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to know that he's so concerned about the transgender teens.
And I'm also glad that people are realizing how I keep you at bay, how I have to control, some of your emotional outbursts. Man, I don't know what time it is. It's been flying by.
It's been about an hour.
Perfect.
Close to an hour, yeah.
Yeah.
I got to go see the movie.
Oh, what time's the movie?
6. Well, 6:30, but I got to leave my apartment at 6.
All right. Well, as always.
And I've had to urinate since I got here, but
Man.
I was going to tough it out just so I could make it through the podcast.
Nice, because I had to take a shit earlier, and I had to run back to my school so I could shit, so I didn't have a major back blast on the toilet. And the
Yeah,
It's funny.
I held mine one time at Marco's in class. It was terrible. I was sweating profusely.
I thought it was the warm up.
I was in a stall at LA Fitness this morning,
Go ahead.
and I've seen some of the work you've done in bathrooms. And this was the first time I've ever seen this. There was front blast
What is going
Wait,
on?
on the door of the
What?
stall.
There was shit on
So
the
I
store.
had walked by this bathroom stall the other day, and
So
there,
you
someone,
picked it out. It called to you.
well, no, I walked by it. I was going to use it, and I looked in. I was like, oh, and there was like a mess.
That's the one that people just
So I went
defile.
back, but I went back, and it was clean. And then I turned and
The
looked.
poor fucking people that got to clean this
The
place.
toilet and the floor were all clean, like spotless, like a normal toilet. And then I looked at the door,
And the wall was just
and on the front of the, like if you were to close the door of a bathroom stall,
right.
that part of the door, there were several droplets of diarrhea on the front of the wall.
So I can understand how and when this happens, because he goes in, right? Because it's a male bathroom, right? Not
Right.
not a gender fluid bathroom, right? So it's a
As far
male
as I
ba-
know, yeah.
it's a male bathroom, and the mistake this guy makes is that he bends over and pulls his pants down while facing the toilet.
I got you. He's trying
So-
to. He's putting his face in it.
Exactly. So what occurred is that a lot of relaxation occurs. It's tough to hold everything in, and that's where the door gets it. What I'm surprised is that the sidewalls, there was no evidence on the sidewalls.
There may have been. It could have just been. I bet when the person was cleaning, the door was.
Yes, the door was
and they
open.
didn't even notice.
Yeah. So the sidewalls probably got it. Maybe some of the toilet, because you saw what I did. There's all angle of attack.
Oh my god.
So as always, we cover all kinds of subjects. The Oxford comma, fight. When is it a fight? When is it not a fight?
Shit splatter.
Shit trajectory.
Yes, attack. Angle of attacks when you're taking shits. And Tim Carpenter's wife is my biggest fan. Man, I can't wait to see her.
All right, that's it.
Peace.
Show's over.
That's the weirdest ending.
Tim and I would like to thank our sound engineer and studio owner, Devin Wade, for always doing a great job with the sound, but also the beautiful facility that we get to use here at SFX Studios. We'd also like to thank Eddie Lynn, who takes and donates his time to the podcast to do all the video editing and everything you see on our social media. So really appreciate that from Eddie Lynn. And we'd also like to thank our friend Ralphie Darden, aka DJ Major Taylor, who gave us the original music that we use. So you're welcome, Tim. For
And almost just as importantly as everybody else that he mentioned, we would like to thank all of our listeners that submitted questions.
This is the Ninja Rock Podcast with Marco Perazzo and Tim Carpenter. The podcast for the true martial artist.